Welcome to this Focus Education course on the Ofsted Phonecall, what to expect and how to best prepare. My name's Tim Nelson. I'm an associate with Focus Education, have been for a number of years. My background's primary headships, local authority work, Ofsted, and I'll be taking you through this course. This has been fully updated for the Ofsted inspection framework from the autumn term 2025. So some things have continued from the previous framework. Ofsted, over the past year, really have been trialling in phoning schools on a Monday rather than any time up till Wednesday. That went down very well with schools. So from January, they continued with that, and that's going to continue. And they're going to try and phone schools by 10 o'clock. They're trying to reduce the time frame that schools are waiting for the phone to ring. Anything around send need that they need to know about in terms of alternative provision or the use of any, the development of any unit on site to meet the needs of certain children, any children on part-time timetables, etc. As part of the drive towards, Ofsted would say, the well-being of head teachers, asking if any reasonable adjustments are needed for leaders or staff. I strongly recommend leaders at any level in school have a think about 2 or 3 examples they can give of key success stories in their leadership remit. For you as a head teacher, the bigger picture stuff, since we were last inspected as a school, we have successfully addressed that key issue of boys writing, and we've got the data to show it in the information in books. We've done a big push on behaviours around the school, particularly outside lessons. We've introduced Opal at lunchtime. We've done lots of work with developing leadership amongst the children at lunchtimes and roles and responsibilities. And we've had a great push on overall about early years into Key Stage 1. You know, the bigger picture stuff that you've addressed. And then leading into, and our priorities this year are greater depth in maths and further closing the gap for our disadvantaged across the curriculum. You're being able to summarise not just what you're working on this year and at the moment, but the successes you've had in the past, and likewise for your Senko to be able to talk about the impact that they've had. As long as they've been in post for a while, obviously if they've only just joined, they've got nothing in the bank so far. And then a discussion about your self-evaluation against the 5-point scale. You will have seen the new toolkit. If you've eaten at Nando's, you'll be familiar with the look of it in terms of the 5-point scale. Ofsted have said that schools don't have to provide a self-evaluation document, a SEF or assess, but they do want in the conversation to talk with you about your evaluation. Where do you think the school sits against the toolkit? So you know, they give with one hand and take away with the other. Schools I'm working with use Focus report card that Clive Davis has put together as a format, or have gone through the toolkit with a highlighted pen and annotated it, but you need to have that awareness of the new toolkit and be able to talk about where you are in terms of the scale there. And a really important discussion about inclusion. Under the old framework, it was all a discussion about curriculum, intent, implementation, impact, the 3 I's of the previous framework. Now it is very much inclusion. Have a discussion with your senior leaders. What does inclusion mean in your context? Because it means different things in different schools depending on the makeup of your children, the demographics, who you have in the school. So it's really important that you can give a consistent view about, it's got some hints there for you to think about. Identification of send. Is it pupil premium? Is it barriers beyond that in terms of children who might, you think their families would be eligible for pupil premium, but there's no uptake for it because they get a free school meal anyway in Key Stage 1. But you know there are considerable socioeconomic barriers for some children, lack of experiences outside school, difficulties in home life for many children, parental disengagement with the school, etc., etc. So what does inclusion actually mean? And by the end of the phone call in the afternoon, you will know roughly, well, not roughly actually, a bit more detail than that for day 1. You might have a rough idea of day 2, but they will want to see a single central record soon after they arrive, and it will normally be the lead inspector who does the safeguarding bit on the first morning. Meet with designated safeguarding lead or leads, meet with the Senko. They will suggest a time, or the lead inspector will suggest a time for them to meet with governors. Again, make that time work for you. Get back to them very quickly with that one. How do they underpin the work you've done to improve teaching across the school? But then also to think about, what about statutory and non-statutory guidance around the other areas, early years, for example? And the key one there is strong foundations. Come on to that in a minute. There it is. I've put the documents on the left there because I know they've been around for a while, the EEF, Improving Literacy Guidance. But it was just noticeable that last year, with the schools I work with on a regular basis, those that were inspected, many inspectors were evidently referencing those documents on the left. And there is an increasing focus on writing in this framework. That's going to be what Ofsted's inspections look like. Don't forget that the lead inspector has scrutinised the website. As always, it's best practice to make sure that you are compliant. It isn't uncommon in primary schools for key policies that get reviewed and safeguarding, child protection, anti-bullying, behaviour, those regular policies that are normally on the agenda first full governors meeting of the autumn term. For some reason, well, I know the reason why, in some primary schools, the most recent policy that has been agreed, ratified by governors, doesn't get uploaded to the website. It appears it's out of date. If I had £1 for every school website I've looked at where it appears key policies have passed their sell-by date, and when you mention it to the school, they're, oh, no, we updated it. And it's because in primary schools, sometimes there's a breakdown in the communication with who should be uploading it onto the website. What does your context offer in terms of positives, negatives, the barriers to learning, the strengths that help the children learn? And then being able to talk about in that phone call how your curriculum addresses your context. How do you build on the strengths that your school has to help the children learn? How do you, as far as you can, overcome those barriers to learning, whatever that looks like in your context? And just to mention that if you are an academy and you are going to request that the inspection is deferred, then the trust have to back that up. They will basically, the head teacher will need to be backed up by the trust. Basically, the CEO will also have to say, yes, we agree. So just so you know, that's the case there. But if you are thinking of asking for a deferral, that's the document to refer to. If your school is a very small little village primary school, then you don't need a map. Ofsted can find their way around. But it is useful to annotate that map, not just with year 6, year 5, year 4, etc. classrooms, but ECT, student for observations. Those kind of things that you will point out to inspectors as you give them the tour round when they arrive. But actually, that's a lot of information for inspectors in a school they've not been in before to remember. I'm not expecting sympathy for Ofsted inspectors. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that's been useful. You might want just to reflect on these questions here before you go back into the real world.